Hi, welcome to the podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start conversation on Unit 12 Role of Education for Empowerment of the Marginalized. And our topic is Educational Deprivation of the Marginalized. And subtopic is Educational Status of the Dalits. In India, Dalits form one of the most educationally deprived sections of the society. A survey conducted by National Council of Applied Economic Research reveals that in the mid 1990s, only 41.5% of Dalits in rural India were literate, and 62.5% of children in the 6 to 14 age group had been enrolled in schools at a certain point of time. Compared to the general population, the progress of schooling among Dalit children 5 to 14 has also been slow. Educational concerns of the Dalits are thus of critical importance. Furthermore, their present educational status should be contextualized in the historical deprivation and denial of learning opportunities. Drawing on the data given in the 5th and 6th All India Educational Survey, Nambisan and Sadwal show how physical accessibility is always a problem for Dalit children. The number of schools available in the predominantly Dalit habitation is much less when compared to a general rural habitation. As a result, Dalit children have to go to upper caste habitation to be able to attend school, which may not be accepting and welcoming them. Norms of purity and pollution still exist, and Dalit children may find themselves in hostile conditions. Research has pointed out to cases where they are systematically discouraged or even forced to leave schools by other sections of the village community. In other words, social accessibility becomes an issue for these children. This is reflected in the poor attendance rates of Dalit children compared to that of the general population. The poor performance of the state to be able to ensure the right to education becomes further clear when the empirical data of the enrollment, retention and performance is compared with that of the other sections of the society. According to National Sample Survey Organization 1999 sources, the school attendance rate in rural area in 1973 to 74 was 64.3% for Dalit boys compared to 74.9% among boys from other than Dalit and tribal social groups. In urban areas, however, the percentage was 77.5%. For Dalit boys, Dalit girls had even lower attendance rate. The high dropout rate reminds us that the caste dynamics still continue to affect the educational experience of these children. The children still find it difficult to be accepted and treated as equals in the classroom. According to NCERT 1999 figures, Dalit constitute only 11% of teachers at the primary stage, 9% at the upper primary stage, and 5 to 6% at the secondary and higher secondary stages. The social hiatus between the teachers and Dalits has also had a telling effect on the student-teacher relationship. Chitins explained that biases and stereotypical notions against the Dalit have refused to die. The poor performance is often attributed to the lack of ability and will of the students themselves, rather than the lack of structural and pedagogical support that these students face. The continuing economic vulnerability makes it all the more difficult for them to be able to invest the time and resources in the educational enterprise. Poverty often forces the children to go out and work to be able to feed themselves rather than attending school. Now let us move to the next point: educational status of women. Education as a means to promote development in social, political, and economic spheres has been gender blind. But in the late 1970s, this perspective changed. Research concluded the existence of a high correlation between an increase in women's schooling level and a decline in the infant mortality and fertility rates. Women who had completed basic education were able to make use of health facilities and services of their children and had a higher interest in sending their children to school. The year 1990 was proclaimed to be the International Literacy Year by the UN. The focus on education for women continued during the 1990s and resulted in the recognition of the significance of female education not only as a basic human right but also as a crucial factor towards national development. The benefit that women have received from the initiatives of the state is evident from the constantly improving literacy rate of women over the past few years. According to Census of India 2001, the female literacy rate has increased from 39.29% in 1991 to 54.16 in 2001. That is by 14.87% point, whereas in case of males it has increased from 64.13% to 75.85%, that is by 11.69% points. During the same periods, it means that female literacy in the last 10 years had grown at a faster rate than the male literacy rate. This has resulted in narrowing the gender gap in literacy rate from 24.84 in 1991 to 21.69 percent point in 2001. However, a common feature across all the districts of the country is the reduction of gender disparity in literacy rate, with the overall increase in literacy rates of both males and females. But the decrease in gender gap still remains far below the desirable levels. It may be mentioned that improvement in literacy rate from 1991 to 2010 has not been uniform in all the states. There was variation from one state to another and within a state from one district to another. Chanaya explains that this gap is wider in educationally backward states like Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Orissa, and Rajasthan, which also happen to be highly patriarchal regions. Furthermore, SC and ST women seems to be the worst victims, for they show lowest literacy rates. Female literacy among the SCs is 23.76% as compared to 49.91% among the males. The corresponding percentage among the ST female is 18.19 as compared to 40.65 among the males. Data reveals poor literacy rates for rural women as compared to the urban counterparts. Not only does it confirm the high disparity among women, but also reveals that a large number of women have reached adulthood without access to the basic literacy and numeracy skills. This makes one ponder over the educational status of young women and the girl child. Usha Nayars draws on data from the Ministry of Human Resource Development (MSRD) to conclude that a fairly strong gender focus has resulted in a gradual improvement of enrollment figures for women at both primary and middle levels of schooling. There is a reduction in the enrollment figures for females as one moves from primary to middle to higher stages of schooling, while the percentage of girls in school enrollment in primary stages in the year 1997 to 1998 is 43.6. The corresponding figure for middle stage is only 40.1. One can thus conclude that women retention is low and they find it more difficult to complete schooling or reach for higher levels of education. This is certainly a major handicap as it limits their occupational opportunity and hence avenues for upward social mobility. The same is the case with dropout rates, which go on increasing from primary to middle to higher stages of schooling much more rapidly for girls as compared to boys. There are many obstacles to girls' enrollment and further participation in educational system. Economic factors too have a bearing on poor retention rates. Parents with low income have to make priorities whether it is economically viable enough to send girls to schools. Boys are prioritized because they are future providers for economic security for their parents, while girls' future role is to be married away. Traditional practices also discourage parents to let girls complete education. It is believed that this might interfere with their marriage prospects in a negative way. The low presence of women teachers too works negatively towards the parents' willingness to send their daughters to school. This is especially the case in the upper primary levels of education. Even if parents do not object to co-education, they feel that the presence of female teaching and working staff in school ensures their child's safety and well-being. Thus, one can safely say that although significant progress has been made in provision of education for girl child, the task of ensuring equality of condition and opportunity is far from complete. Here we want to wind up this conversation and thank you so much for choosing this podcast.